Warm welcome. We're delighted to have you here, and thank you so much for braving traffic and intermittent rain to get here in time. And we're pleased and very honored to welcome our chief guest this morning, the Honorable Minister of Science, Technology and Research, Skills Development and Vocational Training, Dr. Sarath Amunagama. As is customary, we begin with the lighting of the oil lamp, and I will now read out the names of the distinguished invitees who would like to gather around the lamp and then light it. So we begin with the Honorable Minister, Dr. Sarath Amunagama, who is Minister of Science, Technology and Research, Skills Development and Vocational Training, as well as Kandyan Heritage. Mr. Dinesh Veerakkodi, the Chairman of NHRDC. Mr. Seelan Singham, the Senior Partner of McKinsey. Mr. Rolf Glazer, the CEO Designate, BOWS Sri Lanka. Mr. Jagat Pereira, President of CA Sri Lanka. Mr. Kanaga Sabapathy, the President of the Public Sector Wing of the Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka. Ms. Vasantha Pereira, the Director General of SLEDA. Mr. S. Ranagi, Member of the Public Service Commission. Mr. Pradeepa Kakulavala, President of the AHRP. Mr. Malnil Jayasinghe, the Deputy President of CA Sri Lanka. Mr. U.G. Ratnasiri, Additional Secretary to the Ministry of National Policies and Economic Affairs. Mr. Vasantha Kumara, the Assistant General Manager, People's Bank. And Mr. Ranganathan, the Chief Operating Officer of Commercial Bank PLC. Thank you. Please be comfortably seated. And if you'll forgive us a gentle reminder, just to have a look at your phones and check that they are indeed on silent mode. Now, in the spirit of today's subject matter, let's cut straight to the heart of things. We know why productivity is important. There are cost benefits, there are efficiencies, and the shorter delivery times are also among the reasons. So, ladies and gentlemen, are you productive? Or more to the point, are the entities that you lead and work for productive? Do they have the processes they need to train their staff for effective performance? Are hiring practices current and relevant to their needs? Recognizing that very often the answer to that question is no, despite the efforts of those who work for those entities, the Chairman and the Governing Council of the National Human Resources Development Council of Sri Lanka, in collaboration with the Association of Human Resource Professionals, the Public Sector Wing of the Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka, and the International Chamber of Commerce in Sri Lanka, have decided to take timely action with, of course, the valued support today of People's Bank. That action is important because public sector productivity is in the public interest, and it's essential to the quality of life and well-being of Sri Lanka's people. We've all felt that need sometime in our lives, and no doubt we will again. So, to formally open this session with some words of welcome, here's one who's consistently maintained that there's a pressing need for professionals to act for the public good. Mr. Jagat Pereira, the President of the Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka.
Our chief guest, Honorable Minister, Dr. Sarath Amunagama, Mr. Veerakkodi, Chairman NHRDC, other distinguished invitees, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Firstly, we warmly welcome all of you for the discussion on strategies for improving workforce productivity. When Dinesh wanted us to join with him on this program, first round itself, I agreed and said, okay, definitely we'll work together, because this is one of the important area, especially for Sri Lankan new generations, youth. We need to make sure the productivity can improve them. Otherwise, the country cannot move forward. And that is one major area. CS Sri Lanka also involved with the accounting profession. We are working towards a similar concept, so we agreed to work with NHRDC. The productivity. Basically, the literal meaning is rate of output per unit of input. When you look at this, you will immediately remember, understand the machine line workers who are producing products on a particular hour or a day, and how you could improve the productivity of those. But today, we need to broad-base this concept in knowledge workers who are involved in the several other areas of work. So that is the productivity that we are talking. Especially this discussion is for public sector. The productivity is important, and it's one of the key area even for private sector, because both at the end look for the higher productivity, efficiency, so that you could reach to the expected goals. We have we have Seelan Singham from McKinsey to talk to you in detail about how the productivity could be improved. So I'm not going to discuss in detail, but I will just put few words to set the ground for him. Quality is important in productivity, not the quantity, because if you only look at the quantity, you may not reach to the expected levels. In case of knowledge workers, if you take a say software engineer, and the number of hours work has no value, how he set the codings will be more important. It may be less number of lines in a code or a string, but the impact will be very high. So the way of measuring that should be identified in a different manner. In case of the organizations, we need to focus creating the better working environment for the workers, so that they will be able to deliver what is expected, and they will be motivated to reach to the expected goals of the organization, and in the end, the organizations will succeed and they will be able to deliver what is expected from the public. There are few barriers that you need to understand in this process, especially the employee dissatisfaction. If you have the dissatisfied employee, the workforce, you may not be able to reach to your goals. So it is one important area that we need to understand, how we could motivate, satisfy the workers, the workforce that you have. Similarly, you need to look at the performance management systems. Most of the performance management systems are not up to the mark, or most of the measures that used presently may not be up to date. So need to look at more sophisticated mechanisms of capturing this measurement, then only you can reach to this task. Especially if you look at the current environment, there may be more sophisticated software-based solutions available for the performance measurements or the evaluations that should be used so that you can do it much more effectively and efficiently, because otherwise the manager's time will be spent more onto the measuring, evaluating productivity rather than doing the business or the operational tasks. Similarly, you need to look at how best that you can achieve this task by enabling the environment, giving workers more clear tasks or the KPIs. That is another important aspect. And we need to get the feedback from the workforce, so that you will be able to improve those evaluation mechanisms and get their contributions so that they will be able to work more effectively. Today we talk of 360-degree evaluations, that is to evaluate everyone within the organization from the top level to the bottom. Those evaluation techniques cannot be done without using automated systems. So these changes has to come into the businesses. So with this few words, I leave it for Mr. Singham to explain you in detail how this workforce productivity could be improved in your workplace. I'm sure you will definitely will have enough areas to understand and take back to your workplace and improve your productivity at workplace after this session. Have a good day. Thank you very much.
The International Chamber of Commerce was founded in Paris in 1919. In the aftermath of the chaos and destruction of the First World War, the founding fathers of the International Chamber of Commerce had it in mind to create an organization that would produce an economic environment that was conducive to economic growth, to the creation of jobs, and of course the world has changed in that period of time. In the 21st century, we have a number of emerging markets which didn't exist when the founding fathers founded the organization.
The member companies have gone up significantly because people need to be a part of an association where they can grow and learn. Today, it's coming from all over the world, whether it's Asia Pacific, whether it's Eastern Europe, whether it's parts of Africa, South America. And so as we start to see that kind of an expansion, the relevance of the International Chamber of Commerce goes way up because people are going to have to learn how to adapt to those markets.
The International Chamber of Commerce is involved in a number of significant areas of operation throughout the world on behalf of world business. Dispute resolution services, policy advocacy, codes and rules, commercial crime services, services for chambers of commerce, and training and conferences. The International Court of Arbitration is the largest court of arbitration in the world. They offer mediation and arbitration services to companies and are focused on dispute resolution services.
I'm particularly proud of leading an institution, an arbitral institution, which administers cases really literally in all parts of the world. This is something that no other institution can feature, and we had last year cases involving parties from more than 130 different countries.
We are present in a number of international fora advocating on behalf of world business, organizations such as the World Trade Organization, in the B20, G20 process, the United Nations.
The future of ICC is to continue to produce high quality and impactful policy work so that business worldwide can communicate effectively its priorities to government, and that it can have a body that can develop rules to help it trade and invest internationally. Probably the most recent and the most significant achievement that we can be proud of is the agreement that was reached by the World Trade Organization to conclude a series of agreements, including an agreement on trade facilitation. These are the first multilateral trade agreements to have been reached by the World Trade Organization since its creation in 1995.
The areas that we specialize in are trade finance frauds, shipping frauds, including maritime piracy, the collection of information on intellectual property crimes, and anti-money laundering and compliance issues for banks. For example, in maritime piracy, we set up the Piracy Reporting Center, which is still the only center capable of receiving reports directly from ships when they are attacked wherever they are in the world. We compile these reports, it becomes a basis for law enforcement agencies to respond to these attacks.
Our global network includes over 6.5 million companies, chambers, and associations in over 130 countries throughout the world.
If by 2030, the developed countries are going to represent about 30% of world GDP, that means 70% of world GDP is coming from outside the developed country. So with that kind of an opportunity, the International Chamber of Commerce is that global business platform that you have to be a part of if you're going to be able to achieve that kind of growth.
So thanks to Mr. Pereira for setting the scene as he did and underscoring the need for a more modern approach to productivity. His remarks were also supported by the findings of an ILO study in Sri Lanka in 2015. But as you mentioned, knowledge development is also essential. And as we were able to appreciate from that quick video overview, that is an area which the International Chamber of Commerce is very much committed to. And so there are a few knowledge development events, as I suppose we could call them, that are to take place. One of them, as you can see here, is the Fireside Chat, which will be taking place on the 29th of August. Now, this is one forum where, as you can see, there are 5 different entrepreneurs who have done a lot of work in Sri Lanka and have been very successful, and it's an opportunity to see them all together on one stage. So that's a great opportunity. There's another program that is going to be held for the first time in Sri Lanka. That's the most admired companies of Sri Lanka for 2018. It's the first time it's being held, and applications will be open till the 10th of July. So if by any chance your company has not submitted its application, this is an opportunity to do so. The award ceremony will take place on the 10th of September. Now, our chief guest is actually well known in this distinguished company, and his expertise will no doubt speak for itself when he addresses this gathering, so we won't dwell on it at length. But as you know, his experience encompasses a wide swath of ministerial positions, civil service, positions at international organizations, as well as the study and teaching of sociology. We'll benefit from all of that experience in just a moment, but first, may we invite on stage the chairman of the NHRDC, Mr. Dinesh Virakodi, and he will present the Honorable Minister with a copy of the recently launched Handbook on Good Governance, as well as with a report on the findings of the Human Capital Summit that was held. So we extend an invitation also to Dr. Sarath Amunagama to join him in the company of the representatives to receive those publications. And with that accomplished, we move speedily to the chief guest address. Honorable Minister, we lend you our ears.
distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm most grateful to the organizers of this seminar for inviting me to be here this morning. But I'm here mostly to represent the government, to tell you how important this meeting is. The improvement of productivity in all sectors of our country, I think, is a primary objective, which we must somehow achieve if we are to progress on the road to economic growth. It's a very vital sector. If we fail in that, I think we have to be honest enough to realize that many of our developmental goals, and with it, the improving of the living standards of our people, will suffer. So I want to thank the organizers of the seminar and also the participants for focusing our attention once again on this very vital sector. We know that following the war, almost every country had to rely on the public sector to establish their basic economy. You take Europe, if you take Japan, even if you take the successful countries, there was a problem and there was a need to invest large sums of money in the state sector so that you could initiate growth after that terrible calamity. There were also social philosophies that emphasized the public sector. And there was also the need to socialize, the need to give more and more opportunities to the people who had been deprived of those in the pre-war period. So all these converged to create a world in which the investments and the nature of the economy was largely dependent on the public sector. But since then, we have found that that was not a very efficient system of production. And certainly, in the age of competition, when there is a struggle to make the best use of our resources, then we have to relook at the model in which we are going to make investments, both in our capital, including the human capital sector. Sri Lanka is a test case in this, because we have been continuously emphasizing the public sector. Though every government has religiously stated in their budgets that the private sector is the motor of growth, you will find that more and more resources are being diverted to public sector, particularly the corporations, so that the productivity in this public sector becomes a very crucial, and I would say the most crucial aspect of growth in Sri Lanka. Now, very often we find that the requirements of employment, with a large number of people due to a rapid increase of population after the 1940s and 50s, because of various social and even medical improvements, there is a growth in our population. As some people have said, we are a third world country with first world social indicators. Large investments on education, on health, on various other aspects which are very much pro-population growth. So every government in a democratic setup is compelled to employ the public sector not as a means of achieving growth objectives, but mostly as a way of finding employment. That is why if you look at the structure of these corporations, you will find the largest number of people are employed in the almost unskilled, non-skilled variety. There's always emphasis to hire workers as laborers, unskilled employees, and constantly you can see that the equilibrium is being shifted to that side. So how do we tackle this situation? I don't think it's very useful to just go on blaming the workers. Actually now, as head of the Cabinet Subcommittee on these administrative matters, I'm glad to say that after I took over, there are no strikes in this country. I hope I can keep that record. But I find that many of those workers actually are inclined to work and to develop their enterprises. The general public perception that they are idle, they are loafers, they are shirkers of work, really is not true. I must say, I myself thought about that earlier, but now through experience, I'm beginning to change my views. They are quite capable of transformation. We need to engage them. And today's question is, how best can we do that? We cannot start this conversation if we say that, well, it's a hopeless case. We can't negotiate with these guys. They are not interested. The unions are multiplying. I don't think that's a proper approach. We have to see through changes in policy and through changes in practice how we can engage them and make the best use of their goodwill to transform these enterprises.